our government is being run by people we did not have a choice to be there. And that's where I have a real problem with relying on completely on the government for even law enforcement, because there's a bunch of people in this country that will say, hell no. I totally support, honest and ethical police forces. Absolutely. I had one at my house yesterday to take a report from us. But the point is like, if we lose faith in the government because we don't know whose interests they're putting forward, I think that's when we have a problem. And I just want to see more transparency in what's going on and why it's going on. And that's really where I stand with most things.
Definitely. And right now, I think we are live once again. My apologies. I don't know why exactly this happened, that we were out. But there are 6 people who are still watching us right now. For the 6 people, I really appreciate you still sticking around.
Okay.
This will be the way that we can fuse together this part with the other part, at least for the audio listeners, at least for our first Patreon audio listeners. Then I never get to promote this that much, but we are also on Captivate.fm for the sake of the podcast listeners. So here we go. It's so weird, though, because when I took a look at OBS was fine. OBS was great. OBS was like green light, no problems at all with the connection. So one thing that I did see, though, is that both connections on Speedify, I don't know, John, if you use something like Speedify, but I saw like the connections, both of them, like both the blue one and the pink one for my 2 Ethernets, they both went down at the same time. So that is a pretty strange thing. I'm not really sure if this is an area of your expertise as far as why something like this would happen. This may be like so many different options of why this would happen, but I'm curious if you have any thoughts on it.
No, I don't. Unfortunately.
No problem at all. I mean,
so it was a technical problem on your end, Lev?
I don't think it was, because the internet was good. I mean, OBS was good. There was no problem with OBS. So
maybe it's just YouTube, glitching. They have that sometimes.
Yeah, unfortunately so. But either way, I think this could be a strange but a good way of kind of wrapping it up right now. And I'm really happy that, John, you got to be here with us this time, and I really appreciate all the things that you have to say. I do want to bring that question back to you, the one that I was asking Indian Bronson, when it comes to having this balance between freedom and openness. How do we move on as a society to get better in balancing these two things out?
Also, that could lead into like the question about Ars Technica itself, right? So let's go ahead.
Well, so I had I remembered that we have been discussing the lone wolf versus the community thing. Is that what you were getting at? Or was it different?
Oh, that was before, yeah. But you give your thoughts on that, and then Lev, I guess.
Ask me about the Ars situation first. We'll get that out of the way.
Okay, yeah. No, so you left Ars Technica right before, because when we were prepping for this stream, I remember Ars Technica. I don't know if you, everyone knows because it was the ground zero of the internet. We had the whole, I remember Ars Technica during the Gamergate thing, going into certain narratives. And I wonder, you no longer at Ars Technica, you left, or?
Yeah, I left in late 2011 or early 2012, maybe it was early 2012.
Interesting. And so was that just like a business thing, or you wanted to get out of publishing, or?
Yeah, it was a couple of different things. I mean, I had that typical sort of co-founder thing where, I was the deputy editor. So I was number 2 at the site, and the editor-in-chief, Ken Fisher, was just going to stay there. And he's still there, actually. And so when you're in that boat, there's no place for you to go. So I was like, all right, I want to do something else. Like, I'm not going to be the editor-in-chief here. I'd like to try to do my own thing. But then also I was burned out. I went to Wired for a bit and did a cloud computing thing, but I was kind of burned out on tech and tech media and, tech news. that was when gadget blogging, that was in the peak of, Engadget and Gizmodo and stuff like this.
Oh yes.
And so I had seen things go from where an era where I could get like traffic with a really serious deep dive on CPUs or GPUs to getting spanked by, people posting pictures of, robotic Japanese toilets or some, things of that nature, right? So this was, it's sort of the rise of like memeing and virality, and like everything is cyclical, like it's cyclical. It's coming back now to where now you can get paid for deep dives again. It's interesting. So I kind of didn't want to do that. So I bailed, and I did some startups. I did some software after Wired, and kind of found my way back into media.
And now you are a big advocate of Substack, and just because you were there like right for the beginning of the like explosion of tech journalism. I remember one time when I was a kid, I went into a computer shop with my father, and there was this like box receiver where you could watch TV on your computer, and they had the Robot Wars playing. And I remember when I was a kid, I was like, that's fascinating. But now it seems it seems the tech optimism thing, do you feel that it's more of a pessimistic tone, or is there still somewhat of like this latent like tech utopian Californian ideology type of stuff going on? Or do people sort of resign themselves to the fact that it's the sort of the promise of digital technology itself has sort of in some ways plateaued? Or what is your feeling on like the question around like the future of tech in general?
So I think that's an interesting question. I know what you're asking, because Wired was kind of the epicenter in media of that tech optimism, and that was their brand, and it sort of still is. And the way that things have shaken out in the past 10 years, especially in the past 5, is it's started, the tech optimism versus tech pessimism has started to map onto the red tribe, blue tribe stuff, and now it's getting shaken up again, frankly, with the red tribers going after big tech, so there's a lot of, things have mutated and gyrated. I myself am I've always been critical. I consider myself critical of tech, but from a friendly and hopeful place. So, I typically will want to criticize tech and big tech with the feeling of improving it, with the feeling of let's make it better. And there are writers that are that way, like Zeynep Tufekci is that way. She is very much aligned with tech optimism and the tech optimists, but she gets lumped in with the kind of Brooklyn woke media because she's critical of tech. And that's sort of unfair. And I know for my own writing and thinking, I have moderated a lot of my criticisms of tech, especially on Twitter, because I don't want to signal, anti-tech the way that people that work for, most large media outlets are signaling anti-tech now. I don't want to get stuck in that box. So, one of the needles I'm trying to thread with my newsletter is I am trying to be sympathetic with the critics of AI and the AI ethicists, while also trying to be optimistic about the tech, because to me, I'm a capitalist. I'm a pro-regulatory capitalist, so I'm not a libertarian capitalist, but I am a capitalist, and I'm not down with any amount of communism, and I'm not down with very much of socialism. So if you're trying to destroy capitalism, if you're trying to destroy liberalism, well, then we're ideological enemies, and so I kind of find myself in this camp of aligning with big tech, and with the startup scene and with the tech optimists, even though I personally am a bit of a I don't want to call myself a tech pessimist, but I like to criticize tech. I tend to see what's wrong with it more than I tend to see what's right with it, because the market's going to tell you what's right with it. The market that's one of the great things about capitalism. It's going to tell you what you're doing right, but it's not necessarily going to tell you what you're doing wrong in terms of like externalities and, you know, blowback and things like this. So.
Well, full disclosure, I'm very critical of both capitalism and liberalism, but I feel that in some ways, I mean, it should make sense in a sort of in an environment of the freedom to sort of the markets to fluctuate themselves. But I noticed that even in tech in general, it seems that there's a plateauing effect of the amount to which the market can deliver on innovations, or even when they do it, like the innovations that are ultimately beneficial to people or the common good or some other intangible concept that in some ways escapes commodification. Because I feel that a lot of people, like even just the attitudes of people in general and the way that technology and the internet itself is utilized, it seems that it's creating a number of very unique pathologies that are concerning, and people gravitate towards a lot of like lowest common denominator stuff. Like for example, you mentioned Google. I like, for example, when they purchased YouTube, right? Like YouTube was at one point, and I remember, you know, being on early YouTube as a lurker, it was very much like a ground up, like you could broadcast yourself, but that sort of ethos has been eroded over time by the forces of the corporatocracy coming in and sanitizing content. And now YouTube is basically like internet corporate TV, at least at the top. So I understand where you're getting at, but anyways, yeah, that's a good explainer. But who knows, right? I mean, maybe there is a space for there's things are changing, and maybe like alternative people will come into the tech space and change things up. I mean, I feel that the way things are going, there seems to be somewhat of an entropy, but I don't know. I mean, who's to say that things will be radically different in 4 years' time, right? So
Just to, yeah, you know, people put out these like Chinese Cultural Revolution analogies and like these year zero analogies. And I have to say, like, those have an increasing amount of appeal to me, you know, frankly, because there is and this goes back to the very beginning of the conversation around blockchain and who has root and who gets to delete. There's a deletionist, you know, spirit of we're gonna scrap the existing code base and we're gonna start over with the hot new framework of the nanosecond, you know, and so there's that kind of like end it, don't mend it approach, and societies can go through those. You know, they can go through a moment where they want to scrap everything that came before and they want to give into this utopian impulse and sort of create these new structures from the ground up. And of course, that just never works out well at all. So I think that we are, you know, we're sort of maybe in that moment. We're in one of those kind of moments where people are beginning to feel that something else is possible. And I think we went for a long time without feeling that there was something else possible other than the specific flavor of capitalism that we had for, you know, for 20 or 30 years. And so, you know, COVID has brought about some of that, and before that, but it was brewing already. COVID just accelerated it. And, you know, I have a fear that you know, sure, I'm not happy with all aspects of the status quo either, but I am not any flavor of a deletionist type of, if that's a real word, maybe I just, you know, coined it or something, of a deletionist type of that impulse to like to erase the past, to cancel the past, to, you know, to do away with it and to start completely over. And there's something there, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole at all. But I'll gesture towards it. You know, there's something there in the idea around gender identity of like dead naming and reinventing yourself, and, you know, canceling your previous identity that you had when you were a different gender. And so there's something in the zeitgeist of I get to create my identity afresh in this new moment and completely erase everything that I was before I made this transition. And there's a desire, I think, to do that more broadly with all of society, to say we're going to erase, everything that came before, and we're going to, kind of transition the country to some new structure or new set of norms or new set of values.
It's very much aligned with like this sort of the social media model of I forget the exact term, but there's like performativity involved in that you were creating your own self the way that you would on an Instagram feed, for instance. There's very much that spirit of self-curation as an identity. So yeah, that's again another way in which techno capital has certainly influenced people's formation of subjectivity itself, which, I mean, that's a huge topic. I actually have a book here. The Age of Surveillance Capitalism talks about that, which I highly recommend people read. But that's also, I don't know, maybe like people, maybe Nick Land is right that techno capital is sentient and it will steamroll us, and we really don't have a say in the future of the way things develop. I mean, I don't know.
No, I think he's not right. I couldn't get through much of that book.
The blockchain one, yeah.
The whole bit of the technium and all this, I was like, man, this
complexity,
is good drugs. There were some good drugs.
Watch Nick Land Meltdown. You'll really understand. But yeah, that's pretty good.
Well, the one thing that I'd say when it comes to the various identities people are acquiring is, okay, so let's say you have the identity, but now what is beyond that? What is it that you can offer up in terms of making something that people are interested in, creating something? Because that really seems to be an issue. I don't even think for the people that would pretend to be into this culture, but more so even for the person who assumes this new identity. If there's not anything that you're contributing to, the discourse or the culture or whatever you want to call it, if it's just, this is who I am, this is what I identify with, and people should respect that, it's like, okay, great, let's respect that, but then what else you got? I think that they would themselves, at a certain point, not be satisfied with just that. I don't think they'd just be satisfied with saying, this is who I am, this is my new identity, because you have that, then you have, let's say, sex. Everybody loves sex. But then, beyond that, what else is there? I mean, this is something that we kind of got to with the conversation we had with members of the furry community, where we had people, furries, right? Like, they put on the fursuits, and yes. So
there's a lot of furries in tech, by the way, Lev. I was surprised to find this out.
True, yeah.
There's a lot of coders who are furries.
But it's like beyond just putting on the mascot outfits and like hugging each other and going to the conventions, like, there doesn't seem to be that much else in there except for this hug box of furrydom and, all the kinky stuff that also happens, which, like, they don't want to identify with that. They say, like, like, there's more beyond all the sex stuff, yiffing, whatever, but, like, what is there beyond? Like, that's what we wanted to know, and I don't think having.
Love, are you saying this because Kiro the Wolf came back?
Oh no! Don't remind me of Kiro. I don't know what happened with Kiro the Wolf. I don't want to get into it right now. I mean, look, maybe the guy's innocent. I don't know. But the point is that
It's funny we're talking about this too, because Naomi Wolf also got canceled by
two wolves
certain gender activists for her takes on. Oh boy!
Inside you, there are two wolves. Naomi Wolf and Kiro the Wolf.
Kiro the Wolf. But I have to clip that, Lev. That'll be a great Twitter.
Yes, it would. But anyway, when it comes to people trying to find out what the next big thing, culturally speaking, is, we had these big movements that took people, obviously not everybody, but they took a lot of people of the intelligentsia, various art movements that happened. People within the intelligentsia were getting into certain things throughout history. But now, what is really the thing? Everything is so spread out, and you could say in a certain way decentralized, but another way centralized with the big tech companies. But as far as the actual culture goes, like, what is the promising thing here? Because I think I'm going to have to make my own, because I'm not really seeing it from anybody who is, telling people this is my identity and that's it. Like, what is there even a thought to that within Silicon Valley or the tech companies, as far as what is this thing that can now grip us and get us to, something that would involve, more than just self-affirmation, something that would speak to some higher truths?
I think I think the issue here in trying to answer that is there's so many different channels and platforms where there's a thing, and it's like, which filter bubble are we talking about? Are we talking about the filter bubble that we're in with Clubhouse and Twitter and YouTube? Are we talking about the filter bubble that my neighbor over there who's retired is in? Like that guy, he said something to my wife the other day. And she was kind of offended. I'm like, look, man, we're in Texas. If I drove up to this guy's house and told him that there were like more than two genders, like he wouldn't know what I was talking about. You know what I'm saying? Like he's just in like some very Texas, filter bubble. And so there's there's a whole, like, just look at music, man. Everybody, all the Grammys that now it's like, I don't know who these people are, right? Nobody knows who these people are because they're popular in a different scene. There's the Spotify people, there's the YouTube people, there's so many different kind of, everything is fragmented. And so there's no, there is no zeitgeist, there is no discourse, not in as meaningful of a way as there even was 10 years ago. Things are just,
But even though if there are so many of these things, what exactly do 99% of these things have that's, if I'm going to be a snob here and say, worth a damn? Because even in the art community where you have different people who draw, like Tumblr style girls, it's like at a certain point they all look the same, they're all bland, there's nothing more to say. And that's the thing
but that's the paradox, Lev. It seems that as the ability to break apart and fragment increases, there is still in some ways an implicit sort of anti-monoculture, if that makes sense. There's like a weird sort of consensus that people drive back to, even though things are entirely fragmented. Like, for example, we don't really like know about or even care about a lot of these pop stars nowadays, yet they still have some sort of like zombified cultural appeal for some reason. Like, I don't know. It's really weird how things are so fragmented, yet at the same time, there is like a canopy top layer of like conformity that people just naturally arrive at, even without realizing. So I don't know. It's really it's a really strange egregore that we've unleashed upon the world.
And Brian, you had your hand raised. What do you think, my friend? Brian. Wait, I can't hear you right.
His audio's not working.
Yeah, that is weird, and he's not even muted right now. So, well, he's going to be getting back to us, but we did have a comment over here. Whoever owns, this is from Godward Podcast, whoever owns the venue controls what culture emerges from the venue. I mean, that is an interesting thing where you would have, let's say, all these different, bits and pieces scattered around the internet, but a lot of them do seem to fall into the same cultural categories, because there are people within the pop star world, within, let's say, I don't know, K-pop Twitter world, within, the furry world, all these different worlds, they're still talking about all this identity politics stuff related to, pronouns and genders and being queer and all this stuff. So it doesn't matter if you have 100, if you have 1,000, if you have 1,000,000 of these different cultures, like I think Gio was pointing to, they're still going to have something that's going to unite them. And I wonder if it is kind of, and I don't want to be mean here, but it does seem, at least to me, to be going for the lowest common denominator. What do you have to offer if you don't have anything to offer? Well, what can I do? I can have sex, so, there's like some stuff related to kink. And
didn't someone mention WAP in the chat? Is that
yeah. I mean, it does seem to me to be like the lowest common denominator stuff, where what else is there? It's like everything else requires some pressure, and if there's no pressure, this could be an equivalent of what Idiocracy was talking about. I don't know if you guys saw that movie back in the day, but that is kind of the other concern, where before, if people there were always people out there who didn't have that much access to information, people who were living on the farms and, tilling the land, all that stuff, but at least their mind was occupied by making sure that, I don't know, the crops, grew in the right way, and they had to busy their mind about the weather, whether there was going to be a storm coming, all these things they had to think about, like, did I collect the eggs from the chickens and all that stuff. But if we're talking about just these hug box societies where people are going to be scattered around yet united by a lot of lowest common denominator culture, that's something that my concern is it's going to have to be managed somehow. Something like that may require some kind of technocracy. If not, like, well, then everything falls apart if not. But it's like, I'm concerned about the future of humanity when it comes to that. Maybe my concerns are not as relevant, but I'm curious what you think. And also, Brian has his hand up as well, so let me know what you think about that. And no, I can't hear you right now. I don't know what's going on. No, there's something weird with the audio. I'm telling you, after that conversation we had, something they're targeting Brian. But Jon, they haven't targeted you yet. You're still on the safe side because you can speak right now. We can still hear your voice. So let us know what you think.
Yeah, some people are finding religion. I mean, I am a Christian, so I kind of already have it there. I see other people in my age group that are, but some of the stuff, and some people are, they're finding rationalism or, liberalism of different flavors. So it just kind of depends. I mean, I do think that there is a religion-shaped hole. It seems that some people, they fill with these different kinds of ideologies and kinds of
a God-shaped
practices, certain kinds of worshipful practices and rituals. And I mean, look at the standard woke apology. If that's not a sacrament or a ritual, it's very scripted. I mean, I don't know what it is. So these things all follow a template and a format, and it's public, and so people will invent these kinds of they'll re-implement these kinds of religion patterns in these different subcultures.
Were you much involved with the rationalist type of scene, like the Big Yud, Slater? How do you call them? Slater Codex.
Slater Codex. I'm just imagining a big Slater from Saved by the Bell in front of the banner. But I mean, we talked about that in Clubhouse a bit, about Scott Alexander and his strategy, and you agree with me there that there is something to how he approaches it.
Yeah, I am sort of adjacent to, I consider myself kind of rationalist adjacent, but not really. I mean, I like most of the rationalists that I know. That's the best I can do, is to say that I generally like them and get on with them well. And but I don't. I haven't been enough of a follower of it to say one way or the other. What I really think about it. But these are all kind of subcultures that people can go into and take their identity from, and in some cases, yeah, a lot of them do have a what's next problem, and this is an old problem. This is actually the okay, what now? What I just did this, what's next? What now? This is why Scientology has the operating Phaeton levels, right? This is a sort of classic L. Ron Hubbard. Everybody got to like the highest level of clear, and then they were like, okay, well, now we did all the things, dude. What's next? And so he had to go back and invent all these other like more esoteric levels above.
Well, there are esoteric, also, mystery schools out there, which, since you talked about the kind of history that you studied.
Well, rationalism's like a mystery school. I mean, the Roscoe's Basilisk, that could be like
sure,
an initiatory thing.
But I guess when you were talking about like especially things like mystical Judaism, or you were talking about like the Second Temple Judaism, there is a very interesting thing which I always like when I go to Clubhouse and I go into this Chabad people's streams. I always want to bring it up just because I'm kind of curious what they think. It's like we have a symbol, the Star of David, which has been prevalent in Jewish life, but it's a very interesting symbol in that originally, you could even look this up on Wikipedia, it is the Seal of Solomon. So it is literally a magical seal that, according to the legend, was used to conjure up and capture demons, which was like the old way of playing Pokemon back in the day. So you could say that King Solomon was the original Pokemon master. But it's a very interesting thing that we have these symbols that repeat themselves in, you have in Hinduism, you have the 7 chakras, and you have the middle chakra, the heart chakra, also being the combination of heaven and earth, the 2 triangles, Shiva, Shakti, and you have in Hermeticism, same things. You have all these systems that talk about this. I would describe it as a blueprint of the universe. And it's very interesting that like you're talking about, everybody needs a religion. People still seem to be, despite the internet and despite the ability to look and compare all these different things, whenever I bring things up like that to people who are, let's say, even to some of the Jewish people, I just brought that up, and they could only comment on what they knew about their religion, but all the other stuff like Hermeticism and all that, chakras, completely unrelated, they don't know anything about it, and I've always found it to be very strange, because today we have all this information, and I think we can start making some kind of a bigger picture view on how all these different mystery school systems relate to each other, yet people seem to be kind of digging in their heels on what they already know. And have you had similar kind of talks or experiences with people, and have you also gone on your own journey as far as connecting all these different pieces together?
Yeah, there is an interesting analog in what you just said with there was Karen Armstrong was big in like the 90s and early 2000s. So she was a sort of self-described scholar of religion, and she wrote this book, A History of God, and I did not think the book was very good. It had some problems, but she was very popular because she kept writing books about people's religions, and she would do this sort of thing of she had this message of I see the big picture, I can step back, all the different religions say similar things, and I've synthesized them all, and the Unitarian Universalists do a similar thing. You go into UU Church and there's symbols from all the different religions. And, I will say that to me, that feels colonial, to kind of adopt the wokeism, to say that you can kind of stand outside these different religious traditions and unify them is a little bit of a power move. It's a little bit of a colonizing power move. But that is one thing that people will do. The other is to, just like you mentioned with the Chabad people, to burrow all the way in further esoteric, into your own bubble, so as in all things, I think, there's probably a happy medium.
Well, colonization is an interesting term here, because what comes to mind is the idea of Atlantis, the idea of this ancient civilization that would have had ports and port cities in different places all around the world, that would have been, in a way, a great empire, would if it existed back in the day. And the idea here is that if we are seeing from the Sumerians, from the Egyptians, all these different things that are pointing to similar symbolism being used for what I consider to be the process of attaining enlightenment, through Kundalini activation, all that kind of stuff. So it's interesting to me that you do use the word colonization here, because I do kind of agree with Graham Hancock. I know I'm like a repeating record here for all the people who have heard this already, but his idea that we are a species with amnesia, and that we're presented with a view of the world that has been kind of decentralized and scattered around, picking different pieces up and creating our idea of what existence is, what the nature of the soul is, whether there is a god or whether there are multiple gods, out of these various pieces. But in a way, colonization here would apply, taking all them, smashing them all up together and creating this one world religion, which I could see a lot of problems with. I don't want to give anybody, I'm talking about Mr. Beast here. People say he's the Antichrist, but I'm not going to get into that right now. I don't want to give anybody the opportunity to do something like that, because I think it's very dangerous. But as far as doing the research and finding out what exactly did happen before, I'm very curious about that. What exactly can we find out about the past, about who we are? There was that incident of that Israeli space engineer, a head of engineering for Israel's space program, who came out with these comments about how there is this, he's a very well-respected guy. He came out with these comments about how there is this intergalactic federation, and they don't think we human beings are ready to get to where they are right now. And I don't know, it does make me think that he may be right, because there is a lot of work to do here on this planet, just the way that we treat each other, the way that our society is. And do you have any thoughts in that department as well, of the possibility of these federations existing? Is this even something that can be hidden? Because some people say, well, how could you hide something that big, while other people talk about compartmentalization? I can never say that word correctly, but you know what I mean. Like there being different compartments of intelligence that would be able to kind of hide these things. But either way, I'm curious if you do have any thoughts on that bigger question of, alien life, what exactly we are, and so on and so forth.
I was in a clubhouse room with Eric Weinstein where he was talking about this, and he's like, I used to be a skeptic, but this just with the latest revelations, this feels like a dime that's landed on its side, one too many times. And I thought that was an interesting way to put it. That's because it kind of summed up my feeling on not on like more elaborate things like galactic federations, but we actually just 2 nights ago watched that new documentary, The Phenomenon, which is like one of the more like respected like mainstream UFO documentaries, and I thought it was really good. I thought it was really interesting. I had followed the Nimitz thing. I had followed the thing about the underground nuclear bunkers and all this other stuff. And my uncle actually, my late uncle worked for Raytheon and was a Cold War defense guy, and he later worked on the Patriot missile system and stuff like this. And he had been around all those. I remember him talking to us about the nuclear missile launch guys that manned those posts that he knew, and about all the psychological vetting they went through and all this other stuff. When I was a kid, he would tell us about this, the guys that were down there, the launch officers. And he was a firm believer in extraterrestrial life. Now, he never made the connection. He never was like, he never told us any stories of launch officers seeing, UFOs or anything like is in that documentary and like came out in 2010. But I made the connection later. I was like, my uncle was a believer and that we had been visited, and was also, I knew from a child, friends with a lot of those launch officers in the Cold War. So there was probably some scuttlebutt around, that kind of crazy stuff. So I think it's interesting. I don't have I'm a little bit agnostic on it, because at the end of the day, like it doesn't, that's not a button I can push. That's not like a lever I can control. Like if there are aliens, it's like the thing with solar flares. It's like, I don't know when the sun's going to cook off a New Carrington event. So I'm just going to live my life. And, I don't go out of my way to prep for that, because, I don't know that it's possible. But yeah, it's like, it lives in the realm of things that are totally exogenous and, that I don't have a control over. So.
There was another thing that Jason Rees of Giorgiani talked about in relation to these UFOs. I mean, this is going on a bit of a tangent, but I just want to share it with you because I find it kind of interesting. The idea that after World War II, there were Nazis who fled into Antarctica, and there was that whole Operation High Jump with Admiral Byrd, where they brought in a whole fleet to Antarctica, and supposedly they lost, where they had these advanced UFOs. So, I don't know, it's just another way of thinking about it, and I think people are so confused about what exactly is the nature of reality. They jump to little green men, or grays with those big bulbous heads and the eyes. But when it comes to that whole theory of there being like interdimensional aliens and communication that, let's say, some Nazis may have had back in the day, with the Vril Society or whatever, it's a fascinating thing for me to think about. But at the end of the day, what it drives me to is that our form, like the human form, I think there's something really special about it. And you can even see it just in terms of our sacred geometry, which is different from, I think, a lot of different animals. And my theory, and this is the last thing that I'll say about it, is that I think that there are, instead of these weird Star Trek-looking aliens in different planets, I think that the aliens are us. And that when you go out, you are going to find people who look exactly like we do, and maybe they're taller. You know, there was that whole idea with the Nephilim in the, in the Bible, the giants, as well as in the Sumerian friezes, you have these gods that are much taller than the human beings. You know, the lions would be like this size compared to them. So that's another interesting thing about what is the potential for human beings, our role in here. Are we just an evolutionary accident, or is there something more going on to the experience of being human? And here Gio says, oh my god, love is going off again. Yes, I am. But I guess that would be like the last thing that I want to say about it. And Brian, is your audio working or not? I want to make sure you can.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank God. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
I think my other phone, my new phone, was dying, and it was, I don't know, allocating energy. So you're going to see a little reflection. I have the old phone with the cracked screen.
Guys, I have to bail.
Oh, that's too bad, because I really wanted to hear more about that.
Well, Jon, I would love to have you back again. You are an amazing speaker, and I really appreciate the time that you took to speak with us, especially given our interruption midstream. So I highly appreciate that, and I just want to say that you are amazing, and I wish you the very best.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
John, you're awesome, man.
We'll talk more prepping.
And John, hey, why don't we maybe I could interview you for my budding, tiny little YouTube sometime, because I'd love just to exchange ideas.
Sure.
We didn't even get into that. I'm surrounded by tech and backpacks, and just because I'm addicted to tactical gear, probably have too much.
I hear you. Same.
All right, cool, man. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, likewise.
Excellent, guys. So this is the end of the stream. I really appreciate everybody coming in. I'll see if I'll go back to Clubhouse, and maybe there'll be another after party thing there. I'm not sure. I'm gonna ask Indian Bronson if he's up for that. But anyway, guys, this is it. This is the end of the stream. Thank you so much for watching.